everybody, Bob Andersen here. Welcome back. I want to talk to you a bit more about property development. You know, one of the very important things that you have to do as a budding developer is to understand your local market. So let's just make the assumption that you've chosen a particular area that you want to do a development in. It could be a council area, it could be 2 or 3 suburbs, whatever it is. That's what I call choosing your patch. And you've probably heard me talk about that before. Now once you've chosen your patch, what you've got to do is you've got to really understand what is the development potential of various blocks of land within your patch. And what we're talking about is town planning. In other words, what can we do? As a development, what can we do? Can we do a little subdivision? Can we build townhouses or apartments? Whatever it is. Now, in order for you to get a knowledge about that, there's a couple of different ways you can go. Some are a little bit more difficult than others. Now, you could get a copy of the local planning scheme and you could read it. But I tell you what, that's not the way to go. First of all, there's a lot of stuff to read, but secondly, it's in town planner speak, and town planning speak is a little bit different from normal English. No, what I recommend you do is this, and a lot of the students have done it, and they said it's absolutely fantastic. This is definitely the way to go. Now, what I want you to do is to actually go and spend an hour with the local town planner and be prepared to pay them whatever the rate is. It's not a lot. Whatever the hourly rate is for a town planner, I want you to choose one and sit down with them and ask them a series of questions. Okay, this is a private town planner in the area where you want to do developments. So the first thing you've got to do is obviously choose a town planner to sit down with. So what I recommend you do, first of all, just go to the fountain of all information, our old mate, Google. So go to Google and Google up town planners, a particular area. Let's say it was Hornsby in Sydney. You Google up town planners Hornsby. Now I can tell you something, if a town planner has an office in a particular suburb, in a particular council area, I can guarantee you that that is where they do most of their applications on behalf of developers. So Google up some town planners in the area of your interest and call them. Now there's a few questions that you need to ask them while you're calling them the first time to make up your mind which one or maybe even two that you actually want to go and talk to. So the first thing you'd want to do is just explain, you say, hello, look, I'm a developer, I'm fairly new to this area, I'm looking for a good town planner, and I'm just looking around for an opportunity maybe to come and have a chat to you about, about development in this area. And so you could say, look, how long have you been a town planner? That's interesting. I'd like a town planner to have at least 5 years experience, at least, out there. And you could say, well, look, how many applications do you do in this local council? Do you do a lot with the local council? And you could say, look, have you even worked for the local council? Now that could be a real bonus. If you've got a town planner who's now in private enterprise, who previously worked for the council, that can be a good thing, providing it wasn't too long ago. Because they'll have local contacts still in the council, and they'll certainly be familiar with the planning scheme. And you can ask them how long they've been in business as well, for themselves, independently. And so basically what you're doing, you're just getting a bit of a feel for the planner. You might talk to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And at the end of that, I want you to make a decision. Just base it on gut feeling, if you like, or just how you felt from the conversation. But ring them back, and I'm saying 1 or possibly even 2, ring them back and make an appointment to go and see them for an hour, but tell them that you're quite prepared to pay the hourly rate. Because I tell you what, if you do pay the hourly rate, it's going to be some of the best money you've ever spent. And so what you do then, you go along and you have a talk to the town planner. So what are you going to talk about? Well, one of the things you need to know is the different zoning. So what you'd say to the town planner, look, what are the zonings in this particular council area that I need to be looking at? If I want to do a small subdivision, what zonings should I be looking for? If I want to do some townhouses, what zone? Because every council will have a different name for their zonings. And so what's the zoning? The other thing is size. You say, well, is there a minimum lot size that I need to do before I can subdivide a block or before I can build townhouses? And even things like the width of the block. Often there's a minimum width before you can either subdivide or even build townhouses. So we're talking about zoning, we're talking about size, we're talking about width. And other things you can ask them, well, look, what's the parking requirements for here? What's the parking requirements, let's say, for if I do a townhouse and even for visitor parking? Now, look, you never have to become an absolute expert. You can't become a town planner. But it's good to get a good feel about these basic things. At the end of the day, look, you're going to have a town planner and probably an architect if you're doing townhouses that do the smart work. But as a developer, it's good to know these basic things. So we talked about parking. What about boundary setbacks things like townhouses. How close to the boundary can I build? That's pretty important as well. We're talking about the side boundary, the front boundary, and the back boundary as well. You know, even things like services. And the rules can vary dramatically between council and council. Things like stormwater. Now, if you've got a subdivision or if you've got even building townhouses, you have to get the stormwater off the block. And so sometimes if a block slopes away from the road, it might be a bit hard. So you can ask questions like, well, am I allowed to collect the stormwater into an underground tank and pump it up to a pipe? Or am I not? Because some councils you can and some you can't. And if you can, it could be a solution to a problem. And you can even say the same thing about sewage. If I can't make the sewage fall by gravity to a pipe, am I able to collect it and pump it? Now, very few councils allow that, but some do, and it'd be good to know. And even building over those things. Can you build over a stormwater pipe? In many cases you can, but in some you can't. Same with sewage. Can I build over a sewer pipe? Well, some councils you can, and some you can't. And of course some of them would have an easement over the sewer pipe or the stormwater pipe, and you probably can't build over an easement either in most councils. So these are a range of questions that you could ask the town planner just to give you a really good feel. And take notes. Look, record it. Ask them at the beginning, do you mind if I record it so I can remember it? Can I take notes? Can you refer me to maybe some sections of the planning scheme? So the whole point of this, of course, is to get a good understanding of your local market in terms of the development potential. Now, there's no better person to ask than a town planner. And you know what? There's one final question that you really need to ask, and it's an important one. And it is, will you be able to help me when I'm doing some investigations on a potential development site? And not only can you help me, of course they can help you, they're a town planner, but would you be able to do a little bit for free up front? And you can say, look, I'm looking for a really good town planner, you've been very helpful, it's probably going to be you. And because of that, would you be able to help me a little bit when I'm investigating? Now, I'll go as far as I possibly can, but obviously I'll need you just to fine-tune what I'm looking at. Is that okay? Could you do that maybe for free for me? And then when we get a deal, you're going to be the town planner, because that's important. You need a go-to person, a go-to town planner if you like, and you can use this same methodology for an architect as well if you're going to do, say, townhouses. If you're just going to do a land subdivision, then probably the town planner's enough. So that is a great tip. I know it's great because a number of the students have done it and they've gotten back to me and said, you know, that's one of the best tips I've ever had for understanding my market. I look forward to catching you very shortly.